Afghan lawmakers on Monday approved President Ashraf Ghani's nominees for Defense Minister and Intelligence Director, two crucial posts that sat vacant for months as the country struggles to rein in an ascendant insurgency. MPs voted for Abdullah Habibi, formerly a senior official in the Defense Ministry who holds the rank of Army General, to become its new minister. Mohammed Masoom Stankzai, a former top official in the government body overseeing the country's peace process, who has worked to bring the Taliban to the negotiating table, was named head of Afghanistan's National Directorate of Security Intelligence Agency. Ghani had originally named Stankzai to head the Defense Ministry last year, but Parliament rejected him, leaving the post vacant until Monday's confirmation of Habibi. Pakistan and Afghanistan failed to reach an agreement on border management in talks on Monday after days of clashes at the border last week left 4 dead and thousands stranded. Fighting broke out when Pakistan started building a barrier at the crossing. That plan angered Afghanistan, which rejects the colonial-era Durand Line border drawn up in 1893 and objects to Pakistan building checkpoints along the disputed boundary. The two countries agreed on a ceasefire on Thursday, and it was decided that an Afghan delegation led by Deputy Foreign Minister Hikmat Khalil Karzai would visit Pakistan for talks on Monday. A Pakistani Foreign Office official said that Foreign Secretary Azaz Ahmad Chaudhry informed the Afghan delegation that Pakistan planned to build 4 gates at different points on the crossing, saying that these gates are important for the safety of both Pakistan and Afghanistan. Japan's Kyodo news agency said that a North Korean diplomat who was part of 6-party talks aimed at ending the country's nuclear program arrived in China on Monday, where she is expected to attend a forum in which the U.S. nuclear envoy will take part. The North Korean diplomat Cho Son-hui was expected to attend the closed-door Northeast Asia Cooperation Dialogue in Beijing, hosted by the Institute of Global Conflict and Cooperation at the University of California. On the other hand, North Korea said that it won't negotiate the release of 2 jailed Americans if former detainee Kenneth Bae doesn't stop using slanderous language about the North. Bae, who was freed by North Korea in 2014 along with another imprisoned American, has written a book about his detention and given media interviews. Bae had been serving a 15-year sentence for anti-state activities. An anti-establishment party founded by a comic has triumphed in Italian mayoral runoff elections, trouncing Premier Matteo Renzi's candidates in Rome and another key city, and turning its sights on Monday towards its next goal, national power. The five-star movement candidate in Rome, Virginia Raggi, a lawyer with a 3-year stint as a city councilwoman, took 67.2% of the vote in a 2-person runoff on Sunday, becoming the city's first female mayor and 37, also its youngest. Raggi promised to work to bring legality and transparency to Rome's City Hall, where prosecutors probing widespread corruption have found many municipal contracts were awarded without taking bids to political cronies and even a mafia-like clique. National elections are due in early 2018. A mixture of worrying factors has led to rising displacement and narrowing space for refugee resettlement. UNHCR said that new and intense conflicts as well as dormant crises that have been reignited are further fueling displacement, pointing to South Sudan, Yemen, Burundi and the Central African Republic aside from Syria. The United Nations said Monday that the number of refugees and others fleeing their home worldwide has hit a new record, spiking to 65.3 million people by the end of 2015. Europe's high-profile migrant crisis, its worst since World War II, is just one part of a growing tide of human misery led by Palestinians, Syrians and Afghans. Globally, close to 1% of humanity has been forced to flee. The figures released on World Refugee Day underscores twin pressures fueling an unprecedented global displacement crisis. UNHCR Chief Filippo Grandi said that as conflict and persecution force growing numbers of people to flee, Anti-migrant political sentiment has strained the willingness to resettle refugees. According to the UN figure, the number of people displaced globally rose by 5.8 million through 2015, counting Earth's population at 7.349 billion. The UN said that 1 out of every 113 people on the planet was now either internally displaced or a refugee. Displacement figures have been rising since the mid-1990s, but the rate of increase has jumped since the outbreak of Syria's civil war in 2011. Of the planet's 65.3 million displaced, 40.8 million remain within their own country, 21.3 million have fled across borders and are now refugees, while the remainder are asylum seekers. The UN Human Rights Chief is urging Myanmar's new government to end discrimination and human rights violations such as restrictions of movement, forced labor and sexual abuse against Rohingya Muslims and other minorities. Zaid Rad al-Hussein's office on Monday released a report sought by the UN Human Rights Council on Myanmar's minorities. The 18-page report calls on the government to abolish all discriminatory local orders in the western Rakhine state where many Rohingya live, and immediately remove arbitrary requirements for travel. Myanmar does not officially recognize the Rohingya as an ethnic group. Conflict over land and resources in Rakhine caused deadly violence between Buddhists and Muslims. More than 100,000 Rohingya were forced to flee their homes and now live in camps. U.S. authorities were due on Monday to release partial transcripts of 911 calls made during last week's mass shooting by a gunman who slaughtered 49 people at a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, before being killed by the police. Omar Mateen, 29, is said to have paused during a 3-hour siege to telephone emergency dispatchers 3 times and to post internet messages from inside the Pulse nightclub professing his support for terrorist groups. The FBI was due to hold a news conference near the club to provide an update on the investigation and to release the partial transcripts of the 911 calls. Attorney General Loretta Lynch said they would include the substance of his conversations, recorded as Mateen carried out the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, but not any pledge of loyalty he is alleged to have made to the Daesh terrorist group. The death toll from landslides and flooding on the Indonesian island of Java rose to 47 on Monday after rescue workers discovered more bodies. Dozens of houses were buried in the landslides and thousands of homes were inundated by floods in 16 districts and towns in central Java province over the weekend. National Disaster Management Agency spokesman said rescuers found 12 more bodies on Monday, including 4 in 2 villages and in the worst-hit district of Purworejo. He said about 450 rescue workers, including soldiers, police and volunteers, continued to search for 15 villagers still missing in Purworejo. Seasonal rains often cause flooding and landslides in Indonesia, an archipelago of 17,000 islands. Many of its 256 million people live in mountainous areas or flood-prone plains close to rivers. Wildlife experts in Malawi will start next month, moving up to 500 elephants to a sanctuary that they hope could eventually serve as a reservoir to restore some elephant populations in other parts of Africa, where the threatened species has been heavily poached. The massive relocation, slated for completion next year, will involve darting the elephants from a helicopter, hoisting the slumbering animals by crane and loading them in crates onto trucks for a ride of about 185 miles to Malawi's Nkhotakota Wildlife Reserve. The relocation by African Parks, a non-profit group based in Johannesburg, comes amid increasing pressure on wildlife across much of Africa, and especially on elephants, which have been slaughtered in large numbers to meet growing demand for ivory, mostly in parts of Asia.